Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is all Japanese. Both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, albeit the away brewery a few more times than the home brewery. But these two breweries are among the kind of new wave of Japanese craft brewers, as I would call them. They've both built up a very, very good reputation for themselves despite their short existence, and I think it's fair to say that both are best known for the different kinds of IPAs, but the away brewery are particularly known for their kind of New England hazy sort of beers, while the home brewery do a kind of wider variety of IPAs in my experience. But the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't had from the home brewery yet, but one that I've had many times from the away brewery. And it's also the second of a kind of complementary collaboration that these guys did. They produced one beer at one brewery and one beer at another, and we reviewed I filmed the away brewery's beer a few videos ago actually, and that was very, very good. So I'm quite curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store. Hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for the home side of things then, we are going to head up toward Tokyo, the Japanese capital. We're going to go to Toshima, to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Inkhorn Brewing. So this particular beer is called Bird of Paradise. It comes in at 8% ABV, and they're describing this one simply as a double IPA. Now, this one is brewed in collaboration with West Coast Brewing, who are from Mochimune in Shizuoka Prefecture, a bit to the southwest of Tokyo, very close to Mount Fuji, of course, and we reviewed West Coast Brewing's Bird of Paradise a couple of videos ago, and that was very, very good, I have to say. So I'm curious to see how this one turns out. This one is brewed with Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand, and that's, you know, one of the really old school hops, kind of the classic New Zealand hop actually, and it gives you all those lovely kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry type flavours. So yeah, I think this should be quite nice. The only beer that I've reviewed on the channel from Inkhorn so far was more of a West Coasty IPA, but from what I understand, this one is a hazy double IPA, but we won't say anything until we open it up actually, because yeah, sometimes, you know, I think you get some breweries in Japan just call them double IPAs, some breweries will call them hazy IPAs, some will call them West Coast IPAs. We'll just wait till we open it up and see exactly what we've got. But yeah, definitely cool to try the second in this kind of collaboration series that that these breweries are doing together. Although I say that, this is actually the third collaboration of this type that these two breweries have done together, but this is the second of the two beers in the third collaboration, if that at all makes sense. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Inkhorn Brewing, and another link which will take you to all my reviews that I've done from West Coast Brewing, and there will no doubt be more added to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, and do remember you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. There's some really interesting things on the channel these days, so I would recommend that you have a look at some of the other videos there. But yeah, let's go on to the brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the breweries. We'll start off with Inkhorn Brewing first, since they are the home brewery in this case. So yeah, as I mentioned to you earlier, Inkhorn Brewing are based in Toshima in Tokyo, and the main man behind this company is Shun Nakade, who is originally from Koto Ward in Tokyo, and he founded the company along with his wife Amy Holdsworth, who is originally from Connecticut. But apparently Shun's parents were really into fine food and drink, and this rubbed off on him somewhat. But he attended high school in Oregon in the US and then moved to Seattle to study music theory and psychology. And it was during this time that he discovered craft beer, although he didn't really recognize it as being, something so kind of specialised at the time. But when he returned to Japan, he simply wondered why there were no beers similar to what he'd been drinking over in the US. So because of this, he soon started frequenting bars that were selling German and Belgian beers, and during the 2010s he worked in administration and as a translator and interpreter, but he was also trying his hand at home brewing as well. Later on in 2018, he became involved in the launch of a brew pub called Pitman's in Koto, and it was here that he first had his opportunity to brew commercially. And after a while, he was left to his own devices, and he also helped brew a little bit at Choshi Beer and also at Tsukuba Brewery as well. But by 2020, he decided to open up his own project, and he started travelling around and collaborating with other breweries, and then eventually he opened up his own space in 2021. But the name Inkhorn was chosen as a reference to the animal horn inkwells that were popularly used by scholars in Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries. And Shun said that he felt these were a source of inspiration because the ink transforms into words, and the scholars who used these were often debating using foreign words in English. And so he kind of feels that he's bringing foreign brewing culture into Japan, and he thought it was a nice kind of metaphor, I guess. But the taproom space that they have has been designed by Amy, who has a passion for birds and avian conservation. And this is the inspiration of many of the beer names and also the brewery's artwork as well. But when they started, the brewery was equipped with 2 5-barrel or 600 litre and 2 10-barrel or 1200 litre tanks, and the brewing has just gradually been scaled up over the years. They've started canning their beers as well, and they are starting to get a little bit further afield from Tokyo. It's only quite recently that I've seen the beers making their way down here to Osaka, but yeah, definitely cool to finally be able to try the legendary Inkhorn beers. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Inkhorn Brewing for the moment. The only other thing to add would be that as of February 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced in the region of 120 different kinds of beer. And like I said earlier, they're probably best known for their different kinds of IPAs, but they have done a number of other styles as well. But yeah, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and talk a little bit about West Coast Brewing then. So West Coast Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Mochimune in Shizuoka Prefecture in Japan, very close to Mount Fuji. And the brewery was founded back in 2019 by Derek Baston, who's originally from Seattle in Washington over in the US Pacific Northwest, and he previously worked as an architect. So Derek originally came to Shizuoka back in 2003, and he would often visit different breweries during his trips home, but he said that he'd always been inspired by the craftsmanship that went into the West Coast US beers, and he wanted to bring some of that with him to Japan because there just weren't many doing this at the time. So apparently the idea to found his own brewery can be traced back to 2014 when he designed the Shizuoka distillery for Gaia Flow, but this was his first real look inside the brewing and distilling world, and it kind of inspired him to visit other breweries around the country, and talking to those who were working in these breweries and running the companies and things made the whole idea of starting his own business seem a lot less kind of daunting. And so he decided to go for it. But he founded a bar in Shizuoka called 12, and this was basically to test the water and see if the beers that he wanted to brew would actually sell in the area. And it soon became clear that he would, and this was his green light to go for it. So they found a premises in an abandoned tuna processing factory in the Mochimune Marina. They renovated it and converted it into a brewery, and this brewery is equipped with a 10 BBL system, which is around 1,600 litres per brew. They've got 10 fermentation vessels there and 2 bright tanks, and they're producing between 12 and 20,000 litres of beer per month. And the 3 brewers are Satoshi Niwa, who is from Japan. He's also the kind of brewing manager as well. There's Cedric Mel, who's from France, and then they've also got Grant Scholler, who's from the US. But the brewery's mascot is the Hop Dude, who you'll have no doubt seen in my West Coast Brewing reviews so far. He appears on all the artwork, and he was created by Simon Henshaw, who I believe is from Manchester in England, and it's a name that I recognise quite a lot because I've heard it quite a few times. I think he does quite a few different things for different breweries. But over the first few years, they've leaned mainly toward brewing different kinds of IPAs. Like I said earlier, they're known for their hazy New Englands, but they're also in the process of establishing a barrel program as well, and that's something that I want to keep a close eye on. And I have noticed that they're doing a number of lager beers as well, which is definitely cool to see. But they've been opening up a number of bars and tap rooms. This includes Bao, which is a gyoza restaurant, 12, which is the original one, which is an izakaya these days, number 3, which is a bottle shop. These 3 are all in Shizuoka City. There's the Oasis Bar in Hamamatsu, and then there is Umeda 1 and Dark Lab here in Osaka, which I still need to go and check out at some stage. But as of February 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 325 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said, they specialise mainly in New England hazies, but many more things to come from them over the next little while, I'm sure. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about West Coast Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on the can here before we open it up. There you can see the beautiful Inkhorn bird artwork on this one, which I have to say is really nice. I'd be very curious to know who's actually doing the artwork for these guys, because it's lovely. But you can see plain silver top on the can there, which is great, and you can see on the back, I don't know if it's going to focus, is it? There you go, Inkhorn Brewing, and then you've got West Coast Brewing as well, and it tells you a wee bit about the beer in English here. It says, we brewed this single hop double IPA with our good friends at West Coast Brewing in Shizuoka. Thanks to their sourcing of the popular freestyle hops, the Nelson Sauvin in this IPA has a complex expression of peach, grapefruit, mango and guava. It's interesting that, because I would always say that Nelson Sauvin has this very white, green, grapey sort of thing actually. So yeah, I'm not sure if the 2 Birds of Paradise beers that they've done use the same malt base, but what they said on the Inkhorn website was that basically West Coast Brewing were using a hop profile that was quite familiar, or was well used by Inkhorn Brewing, whereas Inkhorn were going to use hops that were well used by West Coast. So that was the idea behind this particular collaboration. But as I say, I'm not sure if they're using the same malt bill in this particular beer. But yeah, this is a 355 milliliter can, and it was yet another beer that I picked up at liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Umachi here in Osaka. A lovely shop run by Koji and his daughter Rika, mainly Rika these days because Koji is a bit older, and you'll find the link to their Facebook page in the video description below. So yeah, you know, go and visit there if you find yourself in Osaka. But as we said, an 8% double IPA, this one, I believe it's a New England hazy, and as we said, Nelson Sauvin hops in this. So let's get it out into the glass and see how we get on. I'm really curious to see. Oh yeah, New England hazy all the way with this. And this will be good because I haven't tried a hazy from Inkhorn yet, but I've heard these are pretty good. So yeah, looks very, very nice. So as you can see, this beer is poured pretty much as you would expect of the style. So lovely, yeah, lovely half finger of a frothy, I would say cream to perfect white head on this one. Kind of medium-sized bubble sitting on the surface of the liquid there, but as you go further up the head, they do get a little bit more foamy. Colour-wise, this one's a kind of like peach juice colour, which is quite interesting. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelized, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But yeah, you don't often have to care about that with different IPAs, to be honest with you. But the colour of this certainly has more of a kind of peach juicy note to it. So I think there's maybe a slightly more kind of biscuity or caramelly leaning malt variety in this. But yeah, in terms of the level of the haze, it is certainly a kind of soupy and gloopy New England IPA. So remember, the haze level in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. But it can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer. But not too much in the way of visible carbonation. The head has faded away as well, of course. But at that, I don't think we really have anything more that we need to say about the appearance. The only other thing I would say is that on the camera, it seems to be a lot more yellow than it appears to the naked eye. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see how we go. Aroma section time. Oh, that smells lovely. Yeah. For me, I don't, yeah, I can see why they might say a little bit of mango in this one, but the grapefruit, I would say, no way. For me, there's a little bit of mango, but it's gooseberry, it's white green grapes. Nelson Sauvin for me is really about these. The only other hop I think you could mistake Nelson Sauvin with would be Hallertau Blanc from Germany, which has a very similar note to it, but you can usually tell that because the floral component is distinctively German. It has that kind of just noble quality to it. But this smells absolutely lovely. Yeah, I could sit and smell that all day. The first impression of this beer is that it's a very smooth, very creamy, sort of more oaty leaning New England IPA. This, we should point out as well though, that the Nelson Sauvin in here is cryo, so it's going to give you a kind of more oily smelling green component, and you definitely get that out of the beer, so for sure. But remember, for me, as I always say, there are 6 elements you should think about with a New England IPA. There's the kind of farmhousey, yeasty character, the rye leaning grainy side of things, the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, and then also the sweeter side of things. This has got a bit of barley malt, a bit of oat, a little bit of yeastiness as well, I would say. Those are the 3 that kind of stand out to me the most in this one. But it does smell beautiful. This is going to be awesome, I think. But yeah, let's just break the aroma down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust in this one. Absolutely. There's a little bit of a woody character as well, but that's quite minimal. Jacob's cream cracker for sure. Yeah, Jacob's cream cracker. Lots of kind of fresh, fluffy white bread. A little bit of kind of sweeter brown bread in there as well. Fresh white bread, a little bit of brown bread as well. I think mainly white bread though. The white bread just has a bit of sweetness. You can smell a little bit of wheat in this one. You've got that little bit of bitiness at the back of the nose. I would guess it's American wheat, as I've often said on the channel recently. I found that American wheat is very smooth, whereas European wheat is a little bit more kind of bitey in things. So yeah, the way that goes together is really, really nice. But yeah, you can certainly smell, I get a lot of oat in this one. As I've often said, oaty character in a New England IPA is a very good indicator of how fresh the beer is. Here, it smells very, very smooth and creamy and things. And this is the interesting thing, because I felt with the one from West Coast Brewing, that might have actually benefited from sitting in the can a little bit, you know, for maybe another week or something, just to let it mellow out a wee bit more. This beer, to me, smells as if it's pretty much on point, so that makes me quite excited. So from the oatiness, you're getting a little touch of dryness out of the oats, but mainly a big kind of creamy, smooth sort of thing. And there's not too much in the way of sweetness with this one. You just get a little hint of like a very slight hint of Werther's Original and a very slight hint of biscuit. But yeah, it is going to be one of these more kind of oaty cream ones. You could tell me this was a kind of oat cream New England IPA and I would believe you. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, the green component, you know, Nelson Sauvin is 16% alpha, so it can give you a hell of a lot of bitterness if you use it for that. But yeah, here it comes across as very smooth, and that must be because of the cryo. So yeah, there's a little touch of earthiness, a nice bit of floral aromaticity, and there's a good little bit of a kind of smooth grassiness there. But again, you can smell the oily character in that green component, and it's really interesting. So for me, the green component is interesting because, as I've often said, there are three types of hoppings in IPAs. Early addition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly bitterness and a deeper, danker aroma. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, pretty much all flavour and aroma, a little bit of bitterness, but that gives you a kind of very bright smelling green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that gives you all flavour and aroma and a very bright smelling green component. And you know, New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all three, which is why they have that deeper, danker flavour and aroma. But for this one, you know, the cryo oil kind of nullifies that a little bit, and you can smell that it's just very, very smooth. As I mentioned earlier, the fruity side of this beer is pretty much what you would expect from Nelson Sauvin. I can see why they say a little bit of mango in this, and maybe a little bit of the guava. And for me, guava is like a very kind of green, ripe sort of character. But yeah, for me, this is all about the kind of gooseberry, white green grapey notes of the Nelson Sauvin. You can smell that straight away in this one. It's really, really interesting. So yeah, I really do like how this goes together for sure. Lovely, lovely smelling beer. Beautiful stuff. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the aroma. So the only thing left to do is actually taste the beer and see what it's all about. So let's do that. So yeah, this one is the Bird of Paradise, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, brewed by Inkhorn Brewing in Toshima in Tokyo in collaboration with West Coast Brewing, who are from Mochimune, next to Shizuoka City in Shizuoka Prefecture. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kampai. Ooh, that's really, really nice. I'm going to say straight away, this is one of those New England IPAs that is ridiculously drinkable. You could easily tan a few of these at 8% ABV, and you know, you would go outside you'd go outside after 2 or 3 of them, and suddenly the pavement would be moving, and you'd be none the wiser as to how you got to that point. Dangerously drinkable New England IPA, but this is really, really nicely done. Very smooth, very oaty, creamy New England. Yeah, ridiculously good. I can see, you know, a lot of people had told me to have a look at Inkhorn, and I think probably, you know, this year we're still in the haze craze, I think, although lagers and saisons are becoming more popular as well. But yeah, if these guys were doing this kind of beer, starting around the same time as West Coast, you can see why these guys built up a reputation very quickly as well, because this is pretty damn good. So this one gets a big thumbs up from me for sure. So yeah, Inkhorn are definitely up there with like West Coast and Totopia when it comes to these New England hazies. There are other breweries that are very capable with these too. The Issa Kadoya, I'm sure if Shiga Kogan did some New England hazies, they would do very well. I think it's only the Snow Monkey that's a New England hazy actually, and that was pretty good. But yeah, this is really damn solid. I can see why a lot of people would like this. But yeah, let's break this beer down then and describe it more in depth as we always do. So, the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely, if we go to the middle third of your palate, you've got that lovely, smooth, white bready bread crust in there. And it has a little bit of dryness the further into the aftertaste that you go. But further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness in there. There's a wee bit of cracker as well. Yeah. the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. But on top of all of that kind of bread crust, wood, cracker, you start to get the big bready notes there, and it does feel as if there's quite a dense and sweet layer of like kind of brown bread. Then you get the white bread, which also has a little bit of sweetness to it as well, and then you can feel perhaps a little bit of a more dense white bready character, which I suspect is coming from a little bit of wheat. But then, yeah, it's all about the oats above that. And the oats, just going from the way the flavour in this beer is, I think it's American oats that have been used in this one. I don't know how widely produced, or the quantities of oats produced in Japan or Asia. Australia would probably produces them quite a lot, but still, the oats in this beer are very, very smooth, and it reminds me of a number of the American IPAs that I drank over the summer when I was in New England. So yeah, I want to say there's American oats in this. It seems quite likely. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice. For me, you get above that kind of white bready there, you get the big oaty there, which is quite creamy in the dead centre of your palate, and as you move out toward the edge of the middle third of your palate, it does get that little bit drier, and you can feel in the dead centre of your tongue there's a wee bit of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type note. But the sweetness in this beer is not too big, actually. It's I wouldn't, the sweetness in this beer is not massive, and as you move further out toward the toward the edges of your palate, you start to get a little bit of a kind of biscuity note to this one as well, which is interesting. So yeah, a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to this beer, which I do really quite like. Yeah, on the middle third of the palate, I think that's everything we really need to say. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I often say, the back third of your palate will give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just a little bit drier. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of kind of brown bread in the base and white bread on top. You can feel a little bit of the wheaty dryness in there too. But the base of that back third of your palate, you've got that fresh white bready bread crust in there, which is just a little bit drier. On top of that, you've got the more kind of light and fluffy, airy brown bread. Then you've got the white bready character as well, which sits above that. These are all lighter and more airy, which is good. But yeah, so you get all of that, and then you can feel a little bit of the wheaty character just kind of creeping over the top of that back third of your palate too, which is nice. So you can feel that little bit of more wheaty, bitey character there. Then above everything else, you've got the yeasty side of the beer coming out. So you've got that dense white bready in the middle of the yeasty character. You can feel that dense, slightly sweet white bready character in there. Then around the edge, you've got this more kind of farmhousey, woody, crackery bread. And that sits above everything else on the back third of your palate. So yeah, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller there. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. And that's really quite nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. The other thing I would add is that in the middle of your palate, the further into the aftertaste you go, you do get this kind of slightly Skittle type flavour out of this one. And I think I've encountered this before, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the things you get from one of the types of yeasts that is often used in these New England IPAs. But yeah, I've encountered this before, and it's quite interesting. So you do get a little bit of this kind of skittly type sweetness in the middle of your palate, the further into the aftertaste that you go. But let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer then. So for me, green component, the back corners of your palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness there. But as you move further forward, there's a wee bit of herbal character, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you get a wee bit more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing. So yeah, a little bit more floral aromaticity there, but the whole thing is quite oily because of the cryo, and round the front curve of your tongue you get that lighter grassy note out of the beer as well. It's a little bit zesty, but again more oily because of the the use of the cryo hops in here. So yeah, the way this goes together, I think, is it's really quite nice actually. It's a big thumbs up from me. The green component, I think, it's not a very bitter beer, this one. It is a very low, I know, quite a low bitterness New England IPA, this, but it's definitely worth trying. So yeah, I like that about this one. Let's focus on that front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. Brown bread in the base, white bread on the top. Then the base of that front third of your palate, the bread crust is there, the brown bread is there, the white bread, and then you get some of the kind of oaty creaminess coming out of it. But then above that, you've got this nice oily bubble where all the fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that. But it's quite straightforward in this one. So yeah, when you take the beer in, you do get, I can see why on the can they'd say there's a little bit of mango in there, a wee bit of guava. And the guava, I was picking that up in the aroma, not so much in the flavour. I would say that it's got like a little bit of a papaya mango type element to it. But what you're going to get out of this beer on that front third of your palate, it's this big oily gooseberry note, the white green grape. That is really what lingers there into the aftertaste for this one. And those are the typical traits, if you like, of the Nelson Sauvin hop. So yeah, it's Nelson Sauvin all the way with this one, and I think it's wonderful. I really do like it. So yeah, awesome stuff once again from Inkhorn. Yeah, I think this is really, really nicely done. So flavour wise, this is great. This is a really, really good New England hazy IPA. This one, I think I actually prefer this one a little bit to the one that I had from West Coast, but I love Nelson Sauvin. And that West Coast one was quite interesting, but I think it just needed a bit more time to mellow out, if you like. But still, I think I prefer this one maybe slightly to the West Coast Brewing one. So yeah, just to put that out there. But let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, mouthfeel wise, yeah, this one, it's bottom end of full bodied for me. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It has that typical Japanese cleanliness to it. You know, the water always feels very clean. But there's a little bit of an oily character to this one, and at the same time the beer is very silky and smooth and creamy. If you told me this was an oat cream IPA, I would believe you. In terms of the IBU count in this one, this strikes me as being very low. I think this is about a kind of standard 30-ish IBU beer, this one. It does give you a little bit of a lingering bitterness into the aftertaste, but again, very, very low. And even for a New England, when you think about a New England double, usually it's 40 or 50 IBUs to balance out the sweetness and stuff from the malt base. I think this is only 30. I think this is really, really low in its bitterness. But the malt base, as we said, there's a bit of dryness underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, and a bit of creaminess on top. Very, very slight touch of sweetness there, but not a lot. This is more of a creamy New England IPA than the fruity side of the beer. Is nice and smooth and oily. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about this one. But beautiful, beautiful beer. But considering the two breweries involved, I am not surprised about that. So pardon me, took that in the wrong way there. This one was the Bird of Paradise, the Inkhorn version, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA brewed with Nelson Sauvin hops and in collaboration with West Coast Brewing, and this was lovely. This is one of the best beers I've reviewed from Japan. On the hoppy side of things, I would say, had some very, very good, more malty leaning beers actually, but this is one of the best IPAs I think I've reviewed from Japan so far. So yeah, that's how good this is. Hopefully Inkhorn do something with the same base recipe a bit later on, but lovely, lovely stuff. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Inkhorn Brewing and from West Coast Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again in the very near future. But until then, Slàinte, Scott, cheers, Kampai, and I'll catch you guys in another review very shortly. Ciao just now.